Hello and welcome to my first ever live stream that I'm doing personally. If you don't know me, my name is Tio, which stands for the infinite zero. What you see behind me is a real background. That's usually the first question I get from people. So, yes, that is a real background, and I live in the rainforest of Bahia, Brazil, and that's my home. Today's topic for this live stream and my intention with live streams going forward is to talk more about my journey and my process of becoming Tio, living as I do, which I will go into a bit more, and what it means to be someone who lives a dynamic life, who lives from inspiration, from passion, rather than living from obligations, from compulsions. What it means to live in this way, to live a heart centered life, what it means to live embracing all sides of you, your opposites, and all your extremes. And that brings me to my name, the infinite zero, which is a representation of being a paradox, of having multitudes, of having opposites within me, of realizing that I am an infinite being, and at the same time, I feel complete and I feel whole, which is what the zero represents. So, how does one be infinite, boundless, and be whole and complete at the same time? This is what I'm going to be exploring a little bit today and going forward in live streams and in other content that I publish. So, along with this, you'll notice that my name now on all social media platforms also contains an emoji of the panda. And the reason for this is that the panda revealed itself as my spirit animal in the last about almost 3 months back in April, around my 34th birthday. And the reason the panda feels like my spirit animal is also because, starting with its physical appearance, it's the black and the white. It's a union of opposites materialized. It's the yin and yang incarnate. Along with this, it's also a being that is deeply calm, deeply centered, cute, playful, and at the same time, it's very strong and has a very strong determination. When I realized all of these qualities, what it started unlocking in me is the permission to live fully from my essence, which has been a journey which I have been on for over 10 years now, almost 10 years now, starting in July of 2014. And while I started my journey in 2014, the name Tio only came to me at the beginning of 2019. The first 5 years of my journey were about healing a lot of stuff that had been happening in my past, including addictions and a dissociation from who I am. I had a strong sense of not knowing who I am, not feeling connected to who I am, and feeling empty, feeling undefined, feeling like I am nothing. And so the zero earlier for me was the feeling of being nothing. And as I entered into 2019, what started happening is I started becoming more and more connected to myself, my real self. And this was after my journey of healing from who I had been programmed to be. So that's what I call the given self. The given self included my given name from my childhood and the whole personality that came with it, who I'm expected to be, who I'm told to be, how I should behave, the morals that are given, the beliefs that are given, all the structures that are given by family, by society, by the world, the way we are supposed to be, what it means to be a good person, what it means to be a bad person. All of that for me was part of my old personality. the given personality from which I had also dissociated. And so my journey from 2019 becoming Tio was about coming into a personality of choice, a personality of intention. Who do I want to be? This was a question I started asking myself more and more. And that's a journey. It's something I want to explain, that it's been a journey, because even though this shift started happening, I kept living from my programmed self for quite a long time without realizing it. That was the shadow aspect. I started believing that I am now this new person, but the actual journey of becoming this new person is 5 years in. I can still say that I live a lot of my life intentionally, but there's so much that still happens automatically. At this point, even doing this life for me is a big step up into my new self, my new identity, into being T or being intentional, in shining, in putting myself out there, in connecting with the world, in having an impact. Whereas my old self just preferred to be shy, to be in the background, to be a software developer. That's who I was. I was always in the background. I was never in the front looking at people. I was behind the screen, behind the code. And that is what was comfortable for me. That was what was familiar for me. And over the last 5 years, that stopped being comfortable. I dropped the identity of being a software developer. I dropped a lot of my old identities, because an identity, also the way I see it, the way I experience it, the way I understand it, having worked with over 1,000 people in the last decade, is that we have a greater identity, and then we have many sub identities. Each of them are strong parts within ourselves. There's the identity of being with your family, the identity of being in your workplace, the identity of your profession, and so many more. So, shedding the old self for me has been a process of shedding all of these smaller identities part by part. It's not a linear process one after the other. The way I see it, it's been a process that's non-linear, that's multidimensional, that's happening all at the same time. And each part I keep working on and overcoming step by step, level by level. And as I grow into a higher level, I drop more of each part. So, what I started realizing on this journey is that I have a lot of parts that are conflicting, that are opposites to the rational mind. And this is what I kept seeing in people that I was working with again and again, is this dichotomy, that split that occurs between us. And this split occurs in the mind, in the rational mind. It's because of how we have been programmed to look at ourselves, to look at the world, how to perceive reality, the way we have been taught to live and see the world creates the split within us. This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. This is what you should do to be a good person, and this is what you should not do to be a bad person. And once we get programmed into this thinking, what starts happening is that we keep canceling parts of ourselves, and at the same time, we can't really keep those parts repressed and hidden. So they come out in all of these sneaky ways, sometimes as bad habits, sometimes as a perversion, a corruption, something in ourselves which we are denying. But again, these words are only used by society. And it comes out in this way because we don't allow ourselves to accept that. So, my journey of becoming TO has been about going from the mind, which sees everything as a split, which is which cannot be reconciled, which cannot be put together. How can you be good and bad at the same time? It doesn't really compute for the mind. But once the mind's labels are dropped and you stop seeing things in terms of good and bad, right and wrong, once you stop seeing things in this split, for me, that is how I see lower consciousness, is the one that splits everything, the one that sees things as positive and negative, light and dark, black and white. It's that's the mind. That's for me, lower consciousness. Higher consciousness to me became when I was seeing things from the heart. To be heart centered, for me, in my opinion, in my experience, is the ability to embrace everything without judging it with this split perception. Is the heart or the higher mind, however you want to see it, I don't really care about the labels. But for me, when you can see from the third eye, when you can see from the heart, when you can see from the eye which unifies everything, that is when you start realizing that the things which seem opposite are actually connected. They come from the same source. For me, this is what is not just unity consciousness, but it's trinity consciousness. Because for me, trinity consciousness is about embracing the dual and the opposites and being able to live in a dual world, to live in duality from a centeredness. Whereas what I see a lot of people talking about unity consciousness is a denial of one side, where everything is light, where everything is peace, everything is heaven. I see Trinity consciousness as embracing heaven and hell, good and bad, light and dark, all at the same time. Is understanding that there are two sides of reality happening at the same time. That evil exists. We don't need to be in denial of that. But evil is as much coming from the same source as is good. And if we start to see that in ourselves, that suffering is not, it's not about avoiding suffering and escaping suffering and ending suffering. It's not about denying life in that way, but seeing that is part of life, that life and suffering are interconnected. And if we stop focusing on not suffering and just focusing on living, then whatever happens is just part of life. And you just keep moving with it. And that's where it comes into the topic of being dynamic, of living in this fluid state. So, how does one have a personality when you cannot and don't want to be defined by a particular characteristic? When when you see that I'm not just, let's say in terms of politics, I'm not just a right wing, I'm also a left wing. I see when people are debating, I see that there are some things that the right wing people are saying which makes sense. There are some things which left wing people are saying which makes sense, and I resonate partly with both of them, but I'm not either of them. I'm someone who's in the center, and I don't want to call myself by a certain label. I don't want to call myself a vegan. I don't want to call myself a carnivore. I don't want to call myself a spiritualist. I don't want to call myself a rationalist, because I am both and I am all. If I can accept that I am all and I don't need to be answerable to the world who tells me to choose sides, who tells me that if I'm not choosing their side, then I'm on the bad side, I'm on the wrong side, with this righteousness of, if you are not on our side, you are against us. If you're not on the side of good, you're on the side of evil. But who is defining good is a certain class of people. If I don't take sides and I choose neutrality, that again can become a denial of life. Because I see this happening a lot in the spiritual world, where people are just trying to detach from the world and not be involved at all. And it's like the spirituality becomes detached from humanity. And it's, being spiritual is, I don't take sides. I'm not saying don't take sides, I'm saying be on all sides. Because even neutral is a side. You are not taking a side, you are taking a side. But what if you can be on all sides? For me, that is the infinite zero experience, is someone who can embrace the totality of life, the totality of humanity, the totality of everything, where there's no denial at all. And obviously this is not easy. We have to understand that this is a process. Learning how to live in this way is so different from how we have been taught to live, how we have been programmed to live, where everything is so certain and fixed, and this is right and this is wrong, and it's super clear. How does one start living in this semi kind of uncertainty? And that for me is what the spiritual journey is really about, and that for me what being alive is really about, is that I don't want to have this fixed certain way of things. It's like today this is what feels right now in this situation. This is what feels right, and tomorrow I may change completely, and that's fine for me. If I accept that I can contradict myself, or what seems contradictory to other people, for me it's not even a contradiction. It's like this is what makes sense now, that is what makes sense then, and I just allow it. I don't sit and debate, oh, I'm contradicting myself. All of that for me is mind. There is so much mental interference, and we are wasting so much of our time and energy in all of this mental interference instead of just living and doing what feels aligned now. What is aligned for me now? And that alignment will keep shifting, because that's what for me alignment is about. Is alignment to the present moment. It's not alignment to some fixed ideal which is so ancient that it has no relevance today, or even something I decided I was a week back. It's like today I realize that that doesn't apply anymore. So for me, the container of personality becomes the one which allows me to be fluid. So my identity, my personality is, I am a fluid being, I am a dynamic being, I am an ever changing being, and I am the constant in all the change. I don't need to attach to a label, I don't need to attach to a specific quality. I am a symphony of opposites. I am the one who is harmonizing the opposites. I am the one who's harmonizing everything. I'm the one who's embracing everything. This is heart centered living, which is also very representative of the panda. It's this very peaceful, calm way where everything is fine. You accept all sides of you. You're centered in all of it. And in this centeredness, in this calmness, it's not like you lose the motivation to do things, and it's not this, for me, this kind of false narrative in spirituality where it's again a detachment and a denial of life, where it's like I'm just going to meditate and I don't need to engage engage with the world. No, I'm deeply engaged with the world. I'm interacting with people, I'm working with people, I'm building a business. I'm Money is part of my life. I'm not denying anything. I chose to have a healthy relationship with everything, to see that everything has its dark side and its light side, but really it's just me. And if I can accept that I have a light side and a dark side, and sometimes what I do may result in someone else suffering, sometimes what I do may disappoint someone and hurt someone, it's part of life. I accept that. I'm not going to crucify myself. I'm not going to stew in my own guilt and keep wasting my time. It's just part of life. And that happened. And I may feel bad about it, but I will not stay stuck in it. I will not stay attached to it. And I will not start denying myself life for it. I'm going to live. I'm going to live fully. And I'm going to allow my impact to have whatever consequences it has. This is one of the oldest teachings in Hinduism. It's about karma, the way I understand karma, and having a healthy relationship. It's not this point system where you get a penalty and get crucified in the next life because you were a bad person, or you get blessed in the next life because you're a good person. For me, karma, the whole principle is that everything has consequence. And it has not just good consequence or bad consequence, again in this very split and fixed way. It has incalculable consequences, and they may keep morphing and changing form. Something may start as good, have a good consequence, and then it turns bad and has a bad consequence. We cannot judge it in one moment, because it's an eternal process. One action will ripple out throughout the ages, and at each different phase it will have different consequences. So if I can just be in inspiration, live from inspiration of what the spirit is calling me to do now, what my intuition, my soul feels like doing right now, if I can come from there, that's all I focus on, is what am I called to do now. This is what I will leave this live with today. Whoever has joined live, thank you very much for sharing your energy. For whoever watches the recording, please drop your comments if you have any thoughts, any feedback, any questions for the next live stream. I will be very happy to dig into it, go deeper with it. That's my intention going forward with these live streams, is to keep exploring these topics, the nuances, and keep sharing also my journey, my process. And thank you very much for watching, for joining, and see you next time. Or you will see me next time.